excited to be able to host this session today. We've got an exciting speaker today. Is Annie. Annie is a global VP for strategic partnership in Fingerprint for Success, which use a analytics tool to figure out high performance individuals and teams in a startup environment. She has got tremendous experience in this space. She has for many years in Investable, which started in Australia and is a global fund now. They have invested in more than 90 companies, and one of the success stories that they have done is Canva, which is is a unicorn in Australia already. So we're gonna start. We're gonna record this session so that all the other members who are unable to join us would learn from us. Okay, I'm gonna start off by asking two polls. So let's start with the first poll. Guess which founder traits are correlated to venture success? So there are a number of questions there. There are a number of choices. You can choose one choice. Whether it's big thinking, big picture thinking, financial matrices, gut making decisions, founders who love power and control, and big initiators. Please use the poll. Poll is the right button next to a shared screen. And for those who are joining us, please go to your poll. There is a question. We're going to start off with some questions to start us to thinking about what traits in the founders which are correlated to venture success. As we know, right, the founder are a huge part of our evaluation over the startups which we will invest in. Okay, this is the outcome. About a third would say it is a big picture thinking, and one third would say a high initiator, and close to a third would be founders who trust their own gut making decisions. Okay, let's go to the second poll. Guess which traits are correlated to venture failure? Are the founders too focused on details, on planning, on rules, or following procedure, or focus on external stakeholders and research? Come on, I think there's more people that can answer this poll. Okay, it seems that there is a majority here, or close to a majority, the founders which are focused on following procedure, and the other bigger one is on founders which are focused on rules. So let's have Annie to talk us what she had learned from the analytics tool and what she uses it for her due diligence. So what we're going to start off with, have Annie share her learning and experience, and then we have a fire chat, and you can always raise your question. I will allow you to open the mic and then ask the questions, or you prefer to put in your questions and then we will answer this. There's a Q&A button at the bottom right hand of the screen, and you point to it and you put in your questions, and then I'll make sure that we answer your questions. All right, Annie, over to you.
Thanks, Tecmo. Okay, I'm going to run through a very short presentation, and I'm going to reveal the answers to those first two polls. So very interesting what everyone's just chosen. So I'm going to go through here. Let me know if everyone can see my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Thumbs up.
Yep. Yes.
Great. This is a topic that I'm very, very passionate about, which is about data for success. And some may even say I'm a bit obsessed with it. So I'm very happy to be with you all and share some of my learnings as an early stage investor for the last 10 years on learning the key founder qualities that will help de-risk your investment. So a bit of background about me. 10 years ago, I met two of the most successful early stage investors in Australia. In fact, probably one's known as a super angel, Trevor Folsom, and together we started an angel investor club called Investable. And at the back of the investor club, we then started a early stage fund, which they've also now raised a second fund on climate tech businesses. Now, in our Angel Club, I then came to Singapore 6 years ago, investing across the region and looking after the deal flow across Southeast Asia. So some of you have already met during my time traveling across Asia trying to invest in early stage startups. I've personally ran 22 accelerator programs myself, ran 300 different types of pitch competition and events, and trained thousands of startups. And one of the investment tools or due diligence process was using data. We had 16 different data points we were collecting on every single early stage investment that we had. And Fingerprint for Success, this due diligence tool that I was using, I got to profile all the people in my accelerator programs, and I got to profile all of our early stage investment portfolio, everything from starting to exiting. And so my background is I'm actually an engineer, so I was very, very, very skeptical of any tool. And it wasn't until probably by the 6th program that I was running these accelerator programs. In these programs, these were 3 to 12 month incubation acceleration programs. So it's not what you say you do. I actually got to watch what did you do in these startups. And so it's been really interesting and fascinating to me on behaviors. So these traits, and so as we know, some of the global statistics is that 97% of startups will fail. 70% of those will fail in the first 20 months. And I've been very lucky in the last 10 years, I've been able to see the tool and the data, the reason why. And the top 3 reasons why is a lot of founders are very passionate about creating a product at a time where the market doesn't need it. So that's the number one reason why it failed. And the second one is they either run out of cash or failed to raise the funds, or the third one, not having the right team. And so a bit of history and background, the CEO and founder of this tool, she was my 2 co-founders that I worked with. She was their coach. She coached them back in 98 and they exited in 2008, and that's the reason they retired as founders, and they've been early stage investing for the last 15 years. And she also sat on their board. So Michelle Duval is one of the world's first early coaches back in the late 90s. And she's personally coached thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs, CEOs, leaders, writers, producers, athletes, you name it, locally and internationally. And in fact, she's coached many companies to multi-billion-dollar IPOs from around the world. And so I've been working directly with her in our Investable programs. And in fact, at Investable, we were her first angel investors when she completed this 15-year research, which is now turned into a 20-year research. We said, you need to capitalize on this research and turn it into a platform, which is what it is now today. And so this was launched at the back of her research that was launched in 2016, making the analytics and the research accessible and affordable for everyone. So if you're an investor, you should jump in and profile your portfolio in this. And so there's 3 key engines to this platform. The first one's the analytics engine that looks at what motivates a person. When they go to work, where does their natural attention, where does it go to? Is it people? Is it tools? Is it money? Is it systems? It gives you some insights about where do you like to focus your energy on. The second engine is the benchmarking engine, where we go out and we study high-performing teams. That's my role right now. I joined the company 2 years ago. I retired from investment, and I'm in fact found that wasn't my top passion. My top passion was helping founders grow and scale. And so that was the bit that I love. And all the due diligence, all the investment committee meetings and all the different reporting and MAS reporting, I actually did not like. So I actually retired from Investable, and I've joined this portfolio company, helping people, helping leaders and founders basically grow and scale. So I now lead out all of the strategic research and partnerships inside the tool, so I build a lot more utility. So as every single founder grows and scale, every single role that you're going to hire, I'm actually going to study. So continuing my data research patterns. And then the last engine inside this platform is it doesn't matter based on the benchmark report card on what it tells you. When you have the awareness, you can get coached. And so we have a built-in AI, artificial intelligent coach doing exactly what Michelle did for over 25 years, and also a platform of global human coaches inside the platform. So users now come from 195 countries, and we've helped everything from accelerator programs. We're currently helping more than 90 accelerator programs from around the world, and everything from a startup to a enterprise customer inside the platform. And so the platform, the first investors were the founder of Zappos, and I'm going to talk through a bit of a case study, which is the co-founders of Canva, which is an Australian tech company that we've been coaching since 2017, have come back, and all three founders have now one of the lead investors inside FRS because they've seen the power of the tool, ex-founder of Google Maps, and obviously Investable, who had Michelle as a coach, and also the ex-Prime Minister of Australia. And so I'm going to play a short video of what the platform does.
There's a lot of focus on hard skills, so there's a lot of focus on technical skills. But at a company, what's absolutely critical is communications, the soft skills, the things that most companies don't spend enough time focusing on. But they're the things that build up great teams, they're the things that build up great companies. And so it's been absolutely critical for us to be focusing on all these sorts of things. And FRS has been an amazing way to help do that.
So it's been really great to have a portfolio company and be on their journey. So they started using FRS in 2017, and so we've been on the journey to grow them from a $3 million company to a $40 billion. So being really able to exponentially help their people strategy, so helping every single person level up. And so we've seen really phenomenal results, and year on year being able to hit their valuation targets. And so we're also very instrumental in their onboarding, teaming, leadership, and we've developed their own internal coaching program. And so they've won multiple awards, they've launched their own foundation, and also winning, the Great Place to Work in terms of culture. Now I'm going to talk, this session's mainly about the research and how I've used the research. I've actually accidentally became an expert at the tool because I was profiling so many founders. And so the key thing inside this tool is we have a built-in benchmark, and inside the benchmark we studied over 20 years the most successful companies who started and exited between 6 million and 1.2 billion within 5 years, and we studied scaled, more mature stage businesses that were profitable over a 10 to plus 15 year plus period. And so inside the tool there's a startup benchmark and a scale-up benchmark, and so it's been very useful as an early stage founder to see inside that startup benchmark. So the first two evidence-based approach to the study is that Michelle studied over 15 years founders who all the different correlations related to venture failure and all of the correlations related to venture success. So she published that white paper research. So I believe the AngelCentral team will send 2 of these white paper for any of the investors on this call that are interested. And then did a second co-study with one of the most esteemed ecosystem researchers, Startup Genome. They're based out of the Silicon Valley. And the second study was studying a combination of startups and scale-ups across 55 cities. Now, the wonderful thing about the second study was it validated the first study, which was, I'm going to reveal to you, there is 10 critical things that are key to the founder qualities in that early stage startup. And so the second study also validated the 10 key things. And what it validated was it did not matter if you're a founder across the 55 cities, whether you're in Singapore or Shanghai or Sydney or Berlin or New York, those 10 key qualities were the same. So that was very exciting to validate that in a global study. So this session, I'm going to reveal the key findings in this research and how I've been using it as an early stage investor. And so the research is a 15-year qualitative study. We have not published the study. We've also done another study in the last 5 years and a 2-year quantitative study. So it was peer reviewed by 2 different universities on all of the data that we were able to collect across all of these entrepreneurs that we studied. Now, the study looked at the number of founders in the company, the number of investment exits, investment events, number of successful exit, the exit side, number of failures, and profitability. And so what it measures, what FRS measures, is not a personality tool or a psychometric test. We hate anything around personalities. We actually hate anything around labels, because we feel like when you label something, it limits your understanding and your ability. I'm like, oh, I'm an introvert or extrovert, I'm a people person. I'm not. We're actually very 50 shades of grey. There's lots of degrees of how we approach things. And so what we're measuring, what we call attitudes and motivations. And so what do we mean by that? Coming back to when we talk about what gives you energy at work. When you're naturally at work, where does your attention go to? As an investor, every time you're meeting a founder or about to invest in a company, what's the number one question that you ask? Do you ask about the financial model? Do you ask about how do you co-founders meet? Do you ask about what's the big picture? What's your exit strategy? That immediately tells us your natural filter for things. What's your natural preference and focus? And so that's what we measure. We look at the platforms represented in different size bubbles. It's very simple. The bigger the bubble, the bigger your natural motivation for that area. And so through this tool, we're able to actually understand how founders prioritize and make decisions. We're able to see what is the dynamics of that co-founding team. And we encourage founders to also profile their investment board, their board members, mentors. This way you actually get a full picture of the strengths, the big strengths in the team, and how to really leverage each other's strengths. And so this is what the platform looks like. You can put any founding team, whether it's 3 people, 10 people, and it will immediately tell you, based on this group of people, what are their top motivations, what is their culture, what are the top things they like to focus on. On the right-hand side, it also will immediately tell you what are the top blind spots based on the 20-year study that we've done. And then here in the benchmark report, it's able to easily show you in 3 categories what we call the green zone, orange zone, and red zone. Green zone meaning your motivation is aligned to the 20-year study. Orange zone, it's just on the shoulder of the ideal range. And red zone is, hey, this could be a big blind spot in terms of your investment risks. So after studying thousands of entrepreneurs and business leaders, this is the reveal. So this is the research. This is the most critical part of the research for all of you investors. So those poll questions on which quality is correlated to venture success, all 5 are correlated to venture success. So for those, I noticed 7% said money. In fact, money, the financial metrics, is the most important one. So you'll see here, 43% successful entrepreneurs at early stage investments are 43% higher focused on financial metrics than the working population. The next one is they're very high on initiation. They start things, follow through on things, they're able to think on their feet. They also trust their gut feeling when they make decisions, so they're not waiting for someone to validate it. They really trust and believe what they do. They're also high on personal power, so that they have control over what they do, and they feel like they have control over what they do. And the last one is big picture thinking. So it was very interesting. 0% of you on this call did not select personal power, and only 7% selected financial metrics. So all 5 are super important. Now, the answer is yes, all 5 are also correlated to venture failure. So we found successful entrepreneurs were super, super low, minus 17% in the working population on following rules, minus 24% following details, focus on details, minus 28% following on procedures, minus 41% on externally referencing others and research, and minus 42% on structure and planning. And in the 7 years that I've been profiling across the region, guess what Singapore is the highest on? Tecmo, can you guess?
On failures,
Yeah. Which one out of the 5?
I
You think it's really high?
referencing others on decision making.
Almost. It is structure and planning. Singapore is, so you need to be super, super low for a successful entrepreneur, but it's structure and planning. So in an entrepreneurial context, the high motivation that I found in Singaporean founders, which is planning, making sure everything is in right, it has the process and everything else. It's actually, there's too much focus on planning and it should be more in execution. And so from an entrepreneurial perspective, it's not great, but from a global health pandemic, as soon as COVID happened, we saw QR codes, social distancing, masks, vaccination. So that, from a planning perspective, that's great because it's so organized. But from an entrepreneurial perspective, this is a real definite blind spot. Okay, now I'm going to reveal the statistics around that high initiation. So we found those who were able to achieve more rounds of funding, Series A, B, and C, and beyond, were 40% higher on initiation. We also found in the research was correlated. They also were able to hire more employees, so they're able to scale faster. And we also, an interesting fact, anyone who had parents or friends who were entrepreneurs were another 15% higher for initiating. So I don't know any investors on the call that grew up in a family business or had friends who are entrepreneurs. You're also more entrepreneurial, so that also influenced. For those we found with very low initiation, we found many of those founders were bootstrapping without funding or found to have much lower preference for initiation. All right, I'm going to pause 1 second. I've got to let my cat out. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm back. Okay, the second significant statistics we found those entrepreneurs who are 30% higher in big picture thinking, we found correlated to have much greater ambition. So they were starting going global first versus local. We found those were able to hire a higher number of employees, also because they got funded. And interesting fun fact for all the females on the call, on average, the female founders were found more motivated for bigger picture thinking than males. So, which is, I always find very interesting. When I was at Investable, I was able to profile our portfolio companies. Out of the 90 companies we invested in, we had 9 exits, and 6 of them had female founders, which I found were very interesting. And all the ones that were unicorns that returned anywhere from 200 to 1,000x had female CEO founders. So a little fun fact there. And then also we found those who were successful were 24% less focused on the details. So again, we found those founders were able to hire more employees. They were the ones who were able to do Series B and beyond funding rounds. We found again they had greater ambition to scale a product globally and be the world first in that product. And then we found those who were focused on the details, to focus on the details, we found was directly correlated to early stage venture failure. And then again, we found those successful entrepreneurs were also 44% less focused on planning. So we found low structure was correlated again to more rounds of funding, Series B and beyond. We found successful tech founders even another 36% lower for structure. And then we also found male founders on average 17% lower on structure than females. And we found, again, high structure was directly correlated to early stage venture failure.
Can I ask what you mean by structure?
So structure, the motivation for structure and planning is that it's the importance of knowing the relationship of every single thing, how it all fits together. So the structure, the planning, the resources, planning something. So I need a strategy, I need a plan, I need to know all of the relationships, all the steps, all the planning part. So the high focus on that planning part is we found correlated to venture failure.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so when we look at from that startup phase to the scale up phase, when we move from that startup to the more, okay, now we want to scale into new markets, what are some of the findings we found in terms of the motivations? So we found entrepreneurs compared to that scale up phase were 18% higher, more focused on money. We found them 21% more indifferent to following rules. And we found them motivated for affective communication, which is higher on emotional intelligence, EQ, 21% higher. And we found another 15% higher motivated for initiation. So starting a project, putting their ideas into actions. Now, business builders, as we move from that startup phase to the scale up phase, it is critical then for them to be successful. Then they need to actually be 37% higher motivated for structure and planning. So really, that scale up phase, it's different for everybody, but usually we see that Series B and beyond. It's usually, that's when you kind of break even, we start to become profitable, to start focusing what's the structures that you have in place or the planning, having procedures in place, motivated to check the work of others, so higher motivation for consistency, and also being able to prioritize and use time, so the motivation for time. So that's the 4 key differences we see at those different stages. So that's the end of my presentation. So let me stop share here. Happy to now go through and do a Q&A and answer any of your questions that you have.
Yeah, so anyone can ask any questions, you can either raise your hand or put in the question in Q&A. Why don't I start off? It's interesting for you to describe the founders' motivations at the early stage and the building stage, right? So how can you identify the founders which got the learning agility to transform their capabilities and the motivations at different stages of the company?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, it's a very hard question to answer because it's really those 10 critical things that we found, that combination in that co-founding team. So it's not any one founder, it's actually the team. So when we see they have across the teams those 10 key things, we know that in the early stage they have the key things are that going to propel them. But around the learning agility, I've met lots and lots, thousands of founders that are not coachable. And so it doesn't matter how much awareness that they have, if they're not open to either feedback or have any awareness, they could still be stuck on the same stage. I cannot tell you how many founders I've met who are still at the same stage of where they are when I met them 8 years ago. And they're starting a new thing and a new thing and a new thing, but they're just using the same methodology that they have because they don't have that learning agility or awareness. And so they may do a different industry or a different product, but they never go past the seed round or the Series A. And so having awareness, are they able to, a good question I like to ask as an investor, go, okay, what was, how do you know you did a good job on something? How do you know? Is it because someone told you? Is it because there's financial metrics? Is it because you just internally feel good about it? So that's the one key indicator going, how do they think about how did they do a good job? The second one was I asked, well, what sort of feedback? What's the last time you implemented the feedback? And, what was the impact of implementing that feedback? And most of the time they can't think of any feedback that they ever received feedback, or they don't even ask for feedback. And I was like, when's the last time you received negative feedback or good feedback? And I was like, I haven't received any feedback. I trust what I do, and I've done this before in the past. And so it gives you some indicators on, do they know their learning ability? Do they notice when they change? So what the key thing I'm always looking for is just awareness. Now, if they don't have any awareness, it's going to be very hard to learn when you're not aware, because you think you're the greatest person doing this thing right now. And then you're also not aware on how do you really work with your early stage investors, work with mentors, work with advisors, work with people who've done it before. So the next thing I like to see is when you flip it around, what sort of questions do they ask you? Every time you give them feedback or advice as an investor, you may have done what they've done before in the past, or you have connections in that industry. But I'm also always curious, founders, the ones that ask questions, go, let's say you may have an opinion on blockchain. I'm always looking out for the founders going, oh, Tecmo, why do you think that? Interesting, and so I'm always looking for what questions that they're asking, because that gives me insight to what type of learner that they are, and do they have the learning agility. If they don't ask any questions, that's when I kind of interesting.
That's right. Okay, there's a question from Randolph.
Yes.
With this matrix, how do you use a script to get the information from founders?
Oh yes, so there's it's not scripted, it's just a 15-minute questionnaire. It's 40 questions, and each of the questions forces you, out of five areas, it forces you to just put in your order of preference, what do you prefer to do when you're at work. So it's the same questionnaire that we've been using for 20 years, 25 years.
So how can somebody get a list of this kind of questions so they can definitely ask the right questions to the founders?
Oh yeah, so I can send you the questionnaire. So it's not a list of questions, it's the actual algorithm of the assessment tool itself. So it's been developed specifically by a cognitive behaviorist. And it was originally for just assessing what motivates people from a recruitment perspective, but we've used it in the context of looking and studying successful founders at startup phase and scale up phase. I'm actually using the same assessment tool, and I'm actually studying software engineers now. I'm also studying HR leaders, salespeople, and I'm also studying people who are neurodiverse, dyslexia, all sorts of studies, but it's the same questionnaire.
Okay, so there's a question from Linda. So actually, you look at your slide, right? One of your slides says that entrepreneurs who are successful are 18% focus on money, right? So how do you focus on financials in the early stages before they are profitable?
Yeah, so it's not so much profitable, it's looking at metrics. So the founders that are obsessed with metrics, so what are the unit economics? The founders who are looking at what are the numbers? Is it the number of people, the number of users? So those who are very, very focused on numbers and metrics, we have found correlate to early stage venture success. Also, we studied the ones from scale up to exits. The ones that were able to exit were another 18% higher focus on money. So even more focus on the metrics. We also found the ones that have exit was also another 21% higher on EQ and another 15% higher on initiation. So they went out, looked for who would be an ideal buyer, work through is IPO the exit strategy. So again, from that startup phase to the scale up phase to that exit phase, we found very different motivations for all three phases.
So there's a follow-up question from me, right? So when you look at different spaces, we look at different KPIs, right? And different matrices.
Yeah.
So what are the typical matrices that you would look at, which the founders would need to focus on?
In what context? When you're referring to?
So successful entrepreneurs, right? Normally they would say from point A, when you get your seed fund, by the time I raise an A round, I should be able to hit this type of KPIs, right? Whether it's revenue, number of customers, or churn rate, or blah blah blah. Right? So depending on the kind of business and the models, right? So what are the typical KPIs that you look for?
Yeah, so we all again just come back to those. It's not those KPIs, whether or not the specific KPIs. We just found those 10 motivations in that early stage, that combination were the ones who are able to get from a seed round to A to B. So it didn't matter what industry or what KPIs that you have, but those low motivations and those high motivations, that combination in that founding team were the successful kind of combination. Yeah.
There's an interesting question from Chia Yuan.
Yeah.
What is the definition of success? I think you mentioned it slightly in the beginning. Is this what you define as success?
Yeah, so the venture, what we defined was successful was either profitable, and the ones that we studied that were profitable were on average Revenue was growing 20% year on year, and on average revenue was somewhere between 20 and 40 million. And the ones that were able to exit within 5 years, between 6 million and 1.2 billion. So inside that platform, that is the criteria of success. And so using this criteria, the companies that were able to coach, using Canva, for example, we use this metrics to coach them, going, hey, out of you 3 founders, this would be your number 1 blind spot. This is what we should work on based on this definition of success.
So Colin asked a question, who is the primary customer for this solution that you just described?
Yeah, it's both. It's investors for guidance and startups for reflection and assessment. Like I said, the awareness for a founder, one of the things, and I talked to Tecmo and Xiaoning about this, is that there are some founders are just brilliant at the startup phase. In fact, they're not suited for the scale-up phase because they get bored. They don't want to be systemizing. They don't want to be, following procedures and rules. They're actually really great at starting things and, being able to be very agile and do things on very little resources. And so at that scale-up phase, they start to get bored and they're actually really disruptive. And so when you know that up front, that you're only really good at that phase, we're able to coach founders, hey, for this scale-up phase, you may hire an ideal corporate type of CEO to take on the business, because that part is about just systemizing and scaling. And they either, take a step back, sit on the board, become a chairperson, or they actually start a new innovation arm or a venture arm or a new product that's a sister to the product. And so it's been really good when you know up front from a founder perspective that that's the bit that's your super genius, and also for for investors who are not trying to force you, because that's the stress or the burnout, because you're now, or you actually get coached to know this is what the scale up phase, which is a lot of the founders that we help exit, we're able to coach them on that journey so that they have their awareness, okay, this next phase is a different focus. And so but for my perspective, I was very skeptical. I was like, okay, I need more data. And one thing I'm super grateful for was it was an amazing deal on paper. This founder had 2 exits out of the UK. He co-founded, this next was a property tech business. And on paper for the 3 years, the traction, the numbers, everything was perfect. We're about to invest $500,000. However, in that meeting, I don't know, many of you, like, investment's a people business. All of us had a weird feeling about this co-founder relationship. They just didn't have the chemistry that we were used to. And we're like, there's something weird, we're not sure. And so we said, okay, we really want to invest. Let's stay in touch. Give us an update on your traction in 2 months. And then let's just see, we're very, very interested, but we're not in a rush. And true to form, 4 months later, they split up. And so the tool where we're able to collect the additional data points, we just saved $500,000. We almost invested $500,000, but our gut intuition, we all just weren't 100%, convinced at the time. And so from an investor perspective, that was great because the data just backed up our intuition. But sometimes, all of us have very, very different. And the great thing for me was in our investment committee, I was able to also see what were our investment biases. And all of us had such a high focus on money that often if we couldn't see how the money would fall out in that business, we weren't interested. And then if we looked at the best deals that we've done, most of them didn't have revenue for the first 5 years. All of the unicorn companies didn't have that. And so it was very interesting. And then also the founders who were first-time founders were more successful than any of the exited founders. And so all of these, at the end of the day, as an investor, I just was interested in collecting the data on that and going, oh, okay, let's test. Also, one of the things I shared with Tecmo was in our investor club, we have over 100 angel investors, and the reason that they joined the club was these were a large percentage of exited founders, and as soon as they exited, they then started investing. However, in their first 3 years of investment, on average, 9 out of the 12 deals that they invested in would fail. And they didn't understand why. They were investing in businesses that they understood. They were investing in people, founders that sounded like them, they liked them because, oh, this is like a younger version of me, this person's hungry. And it was actually just not the right investment metrics. And so it was really good just from an investor point of view, when you know what is it that you like. And I learned a lot about myself because I was exactly that profile. I was like, how are we going to make money? Why are we, and so it's been really good to just also reflect as an investor, what are some of your biases? And also, like, whatever questions that you ask in that investment due diligence process, that will give you some insights on what you like to focus on.
I know in the conversation you just made, it's quite interesting when you say that the unicorns are typical people which don't have revenue for 5 years. Right? Does the data show that is the kind of success matrices differ from different regions? Because there is definitely a focus on revenue, very early stages in Southeast Asia. So does your data show, is it the same in China? Is it the same in Europe? Is it the same in Silicon Valley, Australia, Southeast Asia?
Yeah, we haven't done that next level of analysis or correlation. I mean, the startups and the scale ups that we studied, about the 5,000, were across all across all industries, and so it's kind of a wider study and not just tech or regional. But so the correlations are, kind of collective across all the different industry. The one that we want to release in the next 5 years is tech unicorns that we've worked with. We want to look at decacorns. Is there a big difference, the ones who are able to build 10 billion plus companies versus unicorns? So we're doing lots of interesting studies at the moment, but we haven't done that sort of analysis. So that's kind of, we need the data, and I cannot share with you, the hardest thing in the world is to get an entrepreneur or a founder to sit down for 15 minutes and do this questionnaire. Like, it's so hard. Look, I'll confess, like, I've been trying to get Xiaoning and Deshing to do this for like 5 years now. And so I haven't succeeded yet, maybe one day, but that's the thing, right? So even though we want to do the studies and we want to do the correlations, they're so focused and so busy and doing so many different things to get that 15 minutes. And so I've been very lucky because we used it as our seed round, and so I was able to profile people in my accelerator programs and in my investment, because you would get investment. So that was strong enough as an incentive. And I know that, Cocoon Capital here, they profile all of their portfolio companies and they do DD with our tool. But yeah, so that's definitely, I want to do so many different studies. I think I saw a question here around socially impacted. I've been trying to look at social enterprises across Southeast Asia. I've been trying to get this project going because I want to study like the motivations and the culture of these founders and see what are the gaps, the differences between social enterprises and actually successful entrepreneurs. And when we know what that gap is, when we look at mentoring programs or advising, I am actually pretty burnt out as a mentor, because I when I'm working with founders, I'm saying the same thing over and over again. But when you look at these blind spots, when they have that awareness and we know what the gaps are, then we can do really precision what I call laser focus coaching. And so that's one thing I'm very proud using this tool. I was able to coach founders, first-time founders, who were the opposite to any of the entrepreneurial traits. So answering this question, if you don't have any of the entrepreneurial traits, but with that awareness, they were able to really accelerate and grow their really work on their blind spots. So some of the best female founders that I coach started the biggest fintech companies in Australia. And so it's been really good to now see my alumni when but when the first part is just having the awareness.
There's the same question which Linda, you mentioned about, right, about social impact companies, right? They normally have two bottom lines. So do you see any differences in the success of businesses which have two bottom lines?
Again, I haven't studied enough of those profiles to know if there are any differences. One of the things in a very small sample that I've studied is that a lot of these social impacted typically have the same blind spots, which is a low focus on financial metrics. And so, again, that's a key one where they either, struggle or they rely on grants or research or funding, like that financial metrics ones, like every founding team needs to have a high focus on it. And if you're an investor or advisor, that's the number thing I would recommend. Sit with them once a fortnight and start to build that blind spot. They know how to see and understand how the numbers work and why the numbers are so important. That's definitely one I've seen in the small study that I've done on the social impact entrepreneurs I've seen across Southeast Asia.
Yeah, so there's a question from Vishal, which is very similar to this conversation we had about the founders. How do they grow, or if they're inability to grow, how do they look to professionalize the organizations, and maybe can you make a comment on this question that he has raised in Q&A?
Yeah, what is the correlation of startup success against a founder being a CEO after a certain period? In other words, can a founder whose dreams and has a vision in building a startup to its full potential? Absolutely. So I think the first part is what I've known in the work that we do at Fingerprint for Success is we have coaches to help coach you through the different stages and knowing what is required at the different stages. And so we've been able to successfully do that with a lot of first-time founders. In fact, they're even better than, founders that we found who have exited out of corporates or other places, because they already have an experience or a view of what good leadership is. And good leadership at their previous experience may not be the good leadership for the building the startup or the tech company or the company that you're running. And so we've learned one of the things that we measure is leadership styles. And there are 3 leadership styles that we measure. We look at, are you the one high on power, which is very critical to that early stage? Are you motivated for affiliation, which is you lead through building relationships. You care deeply about relationships at work. Or do you lead through what we call achievements? You like the results or your achievements to speak for itself. And you could be a combination of the 3. But having that awareness of what that leadership style is, you will resonate with the different people that you're leading. And so knowing that up front, we're able to help coach you through the different phases. But yes, absolutely, we found those who were coachable or knowing what the different phases, what you need to focus on, were more successful versus, this is how I am, this is how I'm going to be. At the different stages, we've seen a lot of companies fail because the lack of awareness of what is needed at a later stage. And how you lead 5 people versus 10 versus 20, 50, 100, 1,000, 2,000 plus can be very different. So, and then you also need different communication channels to have that same impact. It's not going to be the same as you're all sitting together with just the 20 of you and you know every single person's name. You may not remember 2,000 people's names. And so yeah, very different correlations.
Also, it's interesting for you to say that you're going to do the study on different kind of success, because when you define your success, it's quite a range, right? From 10 millions to 100 millions to billions, right? So it's a huge range. So we're looking forward to your study. When do you think you'll finish these studies?
When can you give me more data? Can you give me any data? That's the number one thing. So once we get a decent sized sample is when we'll be able to release it. I mean, obviously the studies that we've done, in the 3,000 to 5,000, and so that's what we're working towards. I'm also doing a study at the moment on companies, on studying cultures of companies. So I'm studying companies that do a 4-day work week. And I want to be able to study, are they more productive or efficient than a company that works 5, 6 or 7 days, or who knows these days, depending on what company that you run. Most founders work 24/7, but I'm studying that as well. So yeah, it's really dependent on how much data we're able to get. And like I said to you, getting incentivizing founders to do the assessment is the key part.
Yeah. So there's a question and a comment from Zaka, right, which align with our investment thesis, right? Which always we like founding teams with complementary skills, right? So it's not a one-man show. So how do you measure these right teams which can work with less structure, which align with your success of a startup, right? Which early motivations were less structured.
Yeah, we kind of measure the right team. The great thing about the tool, it's you're able to put real time analytics. Anyone who's done the assessment, you're able to look them into the benchmark and see where they are in the ideal range or not. And it's not saying that obviously at the early stage less structure is better, because if you do have a key co-founders very high in structure, they're always going to go, hey Tecmo, let's not do this. Yes, let's do more planning. Let's, because the investor wants to see this report, or let's do more planning on this. And so then the decision making gets slowed down. And so that's what it's all about, speed at the end of the day, that those combinations. And so the right team, it really depends. But for a role, let's say you're in the events business where there's lots of planning that's required, you're going to need someone in your team who's high in structure. So it's really dependent on the stage, the context of people's roles. So it's not ideal in the founding team, but it may be in the operations team or a person that's key to their role. And so we look at those two contexts: where are you in what stage, what is your role, and then what is your business. I mean, one of the things we were able to uncover with Canva, we studied the whole company, and one of their core values is collaboration. And we measured in their top number one motivation collectively, not just the founders, but the whole company had share responsibility. And through that motivation, where they all naturally like to share and work together, it means they've got the right people working in the company, because Canva is a collaboration tool. It's a design collaboration tool. You can come in, you can design. And so they've already got people with the right mindset to build a product. And it doesn't feel like work because they naturally go there anyways. And so really, when we talk about the right fit, is, are you in the right role? I mean, that's the biggest thing I realized. What I didn't like parts of my investment role is because I was low compliance, low rules, low, whenever I was looking at deals or the legal paperwork, I hated all that stuff. And so when we say, the right team, that's what we're looking for. Is this person in the right role? And is this the right motivations for the stage that you're at? And if you have too many people in the team that are high focus on the ones that are really, that you need to be really low on, then it could really be a blind spot. You could take a really long time to go to market, take a long time by the time you go to market, maybe there's like 5 other competitors, even though you had the idea or the original execution first. This is how it impacts that business.
There's a comment from Linda. Let me try to address this comment, right? She said the comment that investors are attracted to short-term gains. There is a difference between short-term gains and profitability and what we call revenue, right? There is definitely a stronger focus in Southeast Asia on revenue models, but that doesn't mean that you need to be profitable short-term. You can be profitable over long-term as long as your unit economics are strong. Right.
Yes.
So
I agree with that.
Yeah. So maybe can you make a comment on Linda's question and comment?
Yeah, it is a shame because that high bias, and I fall into that category as well when I learnt, and so it could be detrimental to that business. This high pressure focus on these short term gains could mean they don't build a product or build the validation or have the right metrics to go that long-term profitable. So, but it's very dependent on what that business is. Like a B2C is very different from B2B, or B2B to B2C. Like it's all different. And so but yeah, like I said, most of our unicorn companies was just getting the validation right, was getting the users right, was getting the product right, was making it sticky, was making retention. So it depends on the metrics that you have. What's it dependent on? And I'll come back to that metrics again. You have to be obsessed with it, because if it costs you $100 to get that one customer on board, and then that you lose that customer because your product's not good enough or sticky enough, so that revenue focus may not be the right metric. So if it's a B2C product, we also know the B2C ones that we've invested in that have gone all the way, they need so much money at the start to do their validation and testing. So if you don't raise enough in your first you know, that 3 to 5 million, even in your seed round, you're probably not going to have the right people or have the funding or have the resources to build the right product. And obviously the region everywhere else is very, very different. So it just depends. But yeah, definitely can be short-sighted around that. You know, we need revenue or we need revenue. I mean, revenue is a good validation on the people that will pay for your product, right? And so if you can repeat that and scale that, you know, those are the metrics that you're looking for. How do we do this even more efficiently? How do we now not rely on humans to get customers into the product? How do we now self-serve and our revenue comes in when we're sleeping? And so it just depends on the business and the revenue. But some businesses is that, you know, that's what you're looking for, the validation.
I think I know the time is already 5:29. There is a question. Somebody, Vishal, has raised his hand, so I'll let you open your mic to ask your question directly. Well, no, he's shy. But anyway, Eddie, thank you. This is a kind of a very fast machine gun kind of answer, right? So thank you for your sharing. We learned so much from you. So all the members of this participations or any members of AngelCentral will read this. Come back to AngelCentral. We would ask you some questions and then we will send you the white paper. It will be open to everybody. And you can see Annie's email as well. You can always reach out to her. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Thank you for the questions from everybody on this participation group.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. And yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. I've dropped in my email. I just want to save everybody time and energy because I've been through that process. So if I can help you in any way in any of your investment companies or portfolio companies, I'm more than happy to meet and do debriefs on any of your teams or the leaders that you've invested in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you all the participants who joined us today. Thank you.
Right.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.